So Jessica Rose, you're in Israel.
Yes. I'm Canadian. I was born in Ottawa and I grew up in Northern Ontario. So I'm one of you. And I ended up in Israel to do my PhD. I have a doctorate in computational biology, which basically it's when you use math to solve biological problems. And since then, I've collected a few more degrees. So my main of the things that I do, my main interests lie in virology, epidemiology, yeah, these two things. These are the things I love talking about the most. So I actually just finished my most recent postdoctoral work. So I'm on sort of sabbatical now. And it happened right when this coronavirus outbreak started getting a little bit like, to me. Like I was paying attention to this in very early January because there are some flags. I don't know if it's because I studied this or if I'm looking for it. I don't know why, but there were some serious red flags coming up for me in January, and I was like, whoa. Uh, this is something that could represent a massive problem on a global scale really soon. And I was actually scheduled, packed, tickets bought, everything booked to go to Australia on a surfing trip in February. And it really broke my heart to make the decision to cancel at the last minute because I had a really, really strong feeling that there were going to be some problems with coming back into the country where I live, which is now Israel. And I was right, unfortunately. So yeah, I'm trying to keep busy like everybody now because Israel is in complete lockdown. We've gone into basically our own version of a military state. If you leave your house, it has to be for very specific reasons. And if you are caught outside of your home doing things that you're not supposed to be doing, like buying food, then you can get arrested. So yeah, it's pretty serious here. So it's time to find things to do to be constructive. So I started this video series yesterday on the idea of a friend of mine who sent me another video. Actually, two of my friends privately sent me a video and asked me about their validity, and I'm like, oh no. So
Yeah.
I thought this is a great opportunity for me to like use, to just do what I do and share, and maybe it'll help some people with kids, who are bored at home. Like even if a couple of my friends from my past, can share some time with their kids with these videos, it would make me really happy. So, and it would be constructive. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell right now.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for that introduction. And I just have some questions for you. I mean, the first one, the most glaring question is, what is the coronavirus?
Um, it is the seventh coronavirus to so-called jump from an animal species to humans. Uh, Most people have heard of SARS. Most people have heard of MERS. They're all in this family of viruses called coronaviruses, and the reason why they're called coronaviruses is because the Latin word for crown is corona, and they wear this crown of projections on the outside of their membrane. So this particular virus is in this family. And unfortunately, it is a novel zoonotic pathogen, which means that it's brand new to humans, which means that immunologically, like our immune systems have never seen this before. So there's no effective immune reaction to it in humans yet. Zoonotic just refers to the fact that it jumped from an animal to a human species. And unfortunately, again, it's very, very efficient. It's infecting humans. I mean, I'm surprised at how fast this guy has moved through our population. I thought the stage that we're at now, it would have been a couple of months from now, but it's really efficient. I don't know if you want me to go into details about why or how it's infecting humans. It's a little more technical stuff, but that's
Sure.
what it is.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, this may tie into my next question because we talked about COVID-19, and I was wondering if you could distinguish the coronavirus and COVID-19, if you could, point out how, you know, how they distinguish from one another.
Right. So COVID-19 is more a description of the symptoms and pathology associated with the virus that is the nCoV 2019 virus. So in my video, I mentioned this. I call it the coronavirus, and a lot of people are calling it the coronavirus, but this is a very generic term for this virus whose real name sort of is nCoV 2019, which causes COVID-19. The D in COVID stands for disease, so this implies the actual pathology associated with having this virus in your system, which, I mean, mostly it's associated with having pneumonia like an infection in the lower airways, but it's also associated with heart problems, kidney problems, testicular problems, and that's because the way that this virus gains entry into cells to infect them is through a receptor. It's another molecule on the surface of cells in the human body that we all have that are associated with the lungs, the heart, the kidneys, the testes, all sorts of organs. So most people are thinking, pneumonia, but it's not just that. It's another subject matter to go into a long discussion about. But for now, for the most part, the worst pathology is the pneumonia because you can't breathe, and that's pretty bad for a human being. Oxygen exchanging organisms.
And that's why they're talking about respirators so much and the need for respirators, correct?
Yes, well, the estimate from the Chinese population, and I guess it hasn't changed much based on the world statistics. It might be a bit lower than this now, but it was at 20% of reported infected people requiring hospitalization, intensive care treatment in the form of mechanical ventilation, which means you actually have to be like hooked up to a machine that's breathing for you. It's serious. I mean, and a lot of things, or a lot of people aren't talking about this either, which is, I think, very important to throw into your documentary. The people who are recovering, not just the people who are recovering from having a very serious pathology, they have to live with what this virus has done to their body physiologically. I mean, if you sustain lung scarring from having pneumonia, that's not reversible. That reduces lung function. And if you're an athlete, like I'm an athlete too, I'm a surfer, and lungs are important when you're in the water. You don't want that to happen to you. So it's another reason that it's another thing I think people should be talking about at the forefront, because it's another incentive to isolate now, because you don't want to get this. It's not just about getting it and recovering. It's not just about young people aren't getting it. That's not true. Young people are getting it. It's okay. Maybe the elderly have a higher chance of having a worse pathology and or dying, but it's not exclusive to any group. That's being shown by the statistics coming out of Italy, Iran, the United States is right behind them. Europe, I mean, it's, yeah, there are a lot of things that aren't being talked about that really should be, but I kind of understand why it's happening, it's unfolding the way that it is, because I guess the world leaders need to, they need to phrase things in certain ways that are most likely to have the best outcome. And the best outcome is, you know, less people dying and less people sick, less hospitals burdened. So yeah, I get the order of important topics being discussed. But I think this, what I just said, really, it should be integrated into conversation.
Okay. And how does one contract the coronavirus?
It's a good question. It's uh, it's basically accepted now based on the many peer-reviewed publications by medical professionals that it's spread by close contact. Now, you can have close contact is like standing next to someone and they're, you know, they're okay. They're saying also, this is peer-reviewed, published data, that you can be a carrier, an asymptomatic, which means you're not showing any symptoms, you're not sneezing, you're not coughing, but you can still give it to someone. And this is definitely what's going on. And I think that's why it's snuck under the radar, so to say, and has infected so many people so quickly. So I don't want to even bring up the word flu, but I will. When somebody has the flu, they're usually coughing and sneezing within a few days, maybe a couple of days, and that's when they're most infectious. They're shedding the virus. Like every time they sneeze, there's viral particles like everywhere, like shnyeh. So if you're standing beside someone who has the flu, they sneeze, you breathe the air, the virus goes into your nose, your airways, you get infected. It's the same thing with this, for sure, but I think this also has this added element of, just if you're breathing the air next to somebody, it's possible for the virus that they exhale, because there's moisture when you inhale and exhale, and there are virions, viral particles are called virions, that are associated with that air. And if you're close enough to someone, then you can breathe that in, and that's going to go into your nose, and those little virions are going to attach themselves to the inside of your nasal canal. That's why when they're testing, they're going, you know, swabbing your nose. And that means you're infected. What happens from there, we don't know. It depends on you, it depends on age, it depends on smoking, it depends on many things. So that's why they're recommending a 2-meter distance, like social distancing distance, because the claim is that if you are at least that far apart from someone, even if they're infected, your chances of getting the virus that way are very low from that person. So that's how it happens. And the frontliners, I don't know, they don't stand a lot of chances, especially since they're lacking PP, the protective equipment that they require because of shortages that are occurring for various number of reasons. If you're in close contact with someone who's full on infected, if they have like a very bad pathology, they're in the pneumonia phase, for example, and they're coughing and sweating and who knows what other fluids are being released. You're in that zone of terror. And you have to be, I guess, because you're a medical professional and that's your job. So the chances of getting infected if you're at the front line is very high, unfortunately, as we've seen from many of our heroic doctors and nurses not being around anymore because of this. So that's basically the story of how you get infected. One other thing, there is this, the difference between airborne and droplets. I mean, airborne means that the virus is like circulating in the air, but I don't like to use that word because it kind of makes people feel like just if they go outside, they're going to get it because it's everywhere. That's not true. It has to be associated with somebody who's carrying the virus. So Best not to use the word airborne. Let's leave that to the movies.
Yeah. So what are the main symptoms of the coronavirus?
That's an excellent question. Um, it's really difficult to discern from either a cold or a flu, but there are ways that you can know that this is probably not a cold or a flu. The claim is in the majority of people that you will not get a runny nose if you have this NCOV 2019 virus. You will if you have the flu or a cold. You will always, they say most of the time, but I would go with always have a high fever associated with the NCOV 2019. And another interesting thing that I've been reading is that you will go through phases whereby you get kind of fevery and headachy, maybe, and achy, like you feel like you're kind of getting sick, and you'll feel a bit better. And then you'll go through phase 2, which is like really high fever. Maybe that will abate. And then you'll go through phase 3 if you're unlucky and go into full-blown pneumonia. So there seems to be a trend. So if you think you're in phase 2 of that trend, you should start paying attention to the fact that perhaps this isn't the flu. It's a tricky one though. Like for all I know, like personally, I might have already gone through the course of symptoms, because in some people, they're claiming that they'll get it, it'll go away, and they'll never know. And I don't, nobody can really know. Uh, I think you need to know your own body very well, and you need to know. Like my first question to people who are asking me, maybe I have it. I'm like, okay, do you know what it feels like for you to have the flu? Do you know, like, is there a sequence of symptoms that you go through whenever you get sick? Because mine are always identical. When I get the flu, I get a sore throat. Oh, that's another thing. You can get a sore throat from this COVID-19. But then it goes away, and then 2 days later, it's very specific. Anyway, you see what I'm saying. So it's very important for you to kind of go through your database of how you feel when you get the things that you're familiar with and your body is familiar with, like the flu and a cold. This is something that your body's not familiar with. So I would go as far to say that you're going to kind of know by your symptoms if this is something different. But for absolutely sure, high fever, shortness of breath after a while, no runny nose, and achy, just like general malaise. It's a hard question to answer though, because it's really going to be different for everyone. Everyone's in a different immunological state too. So yeah, that's the best answer I can give.
Oh, it's a great answer.
Thank you.
Very, very interesting. I mean, you've already touched on this, but just to ask specifically, what are the steps people can take to prevent transmission of the virus?
Well, isolation, that's it. Most governments, in my opinion, have been giving very good advice to their public. It's almost as if they care about us. Maybe a little bit too late for many people. I think that just comes with being human. We tend to be arrogant and we tend to think, that's not going to happen to me. But now's not the time to hold on to any kind of bravado. Now's the time to take yourself out of the equation of the life that you were living, because everything is different now and everything is going to be different for quite a while. By social distancing is something separate from isolation. So social distancing is this thing where I was talking about proximity to other people in general. You should not be within 2 meters of any person right now that you don't already know for a fact is fine. And by that I mean a family member or a partner that has not had any contact with anyone else, and you know that for a fact, that where both of you have been okay for say 14 days, like no symptoms, nothing. So, for example, me and my partner, we haven't seen anyone else for over a week, and we both feel, yeah, we feel normal. So it's not a big deal for us to be, within 2 meters of each other. But when I go outside for my walks, like even though it's outside, I absolutely keep, a 2 meter distance on all sides from all people, because that's the only way I can be almost sure that I won't either pick it up or give it to someone else. And this is another mindset that people need to get into in terms of social distancing. If you're not going to do it for you, do it for others, because you might be a carrier and you might not know it. And you could be giving it to other people. Isolation is when this is the thing that we're all doing now. Go into your house with your food, with your kids, with your cats, with your dogs, with your whatever, and stay there. You work from home. We all have internet now, so it's pretty easy to be functional at home. Don't go outside. It sounds really crazy because it is. It's surreal. Don't go outside for any reason other than absolute necessity. I need to go on walks or I'll lose my mind. So that is a necessity for me. Yeah, no socializing. Israel had a rule where it had to be 10 people or less or something. It's ridiculous. It goes against what you're trying to prove. There should be no social gatherings at all, because even if you have a social gathering of 3, if one of those people is infected, they're going to give it to the other 2, and then those 2 are going to bring them home. And when you're talking about exponential growth of the spread, it's easy to do the math. There should be 0 interaction at this point in time. And another thing I pointed out in one of my videos is, if everybody adheres to this now, or as soon as people get on board, the faster it will potentially resolve, and therefore the shorter that we will be in lockdown like this. So the more people who are being cavalier and ignorant and just going out and partying, because Jesus, there are videos all over the place in Australia, in Florida. It's just mind blowing. They're just acting like nothing's going on, like spring break. It's like, what are you doing? Are you serious? So we need to get those people on board, because it won't work otherwise. We'll just be in a situation that's pretty dark for a long time. So that's why social distancing and isolation is really important, that we should have done like a long time ago. But if not, then today. There's no time to lose here.
Okay, I've heard of convalescent serum, and I heard a bit of information about that, and I was just wondering if there are any treatments for the coronavirus.
What was the first thing you said? You went out of phase.
Convalescent serum. I heard
Convalescent serum.
something to do with the blood. Where they take the antidotes from previously infected individuals.
Okay, so I'm not up to date on that, so I'm just gonna say that right out loud. But the most effective treatments now are antivirals. Some doctors in China were starting to administer some anti-HIV drugs, like remdesivir. Sorry, I don't know the name. That were proving to be pretty effective at killing the virus. There's also a lot of talk now about chloroquine, which is an anti-malarial, which apparently effectively kills the virus as well. I'm a little scared by that becoming a trend because of the side effects. But yeah, there are a few things that people are trying out in terms of drugs. In terms of therapies, like antibody therapies, again, I'm not up to date on that, which might mean that I'm not sure if anything's developed yet, but I'm going to check. But yeah, basically, from what I can tell so far, it's a lot of band-aiding.
So
In terms,
your sorry to interrupt, but your body has to fight it off. Like that's essential. Your immune system is responsible for the treatment of the coronavirus.
uh, yeah, but you know the downside to that is, it's not funny. I don't know why I'm laughing. About half of the damage done, I'd say about half, uh, in patients who have very serious lung pathologies and kidney problems, is done by the immune system itself. So the infiltrates that fill up your lungs and end up effectively suffocating the patients are immune infiltrates. So the bad news is this virus seems to infect and destroy lung cells in the lower lung that have these little cilia that are responsible for filtering out crap from your lungs and removing them. So you remove the cilia, you remove the ability to remove the large pieces of crap from your lungs. So all of a sudden you have these massive numbers of cells, T cells and B cells and antibodies and everything coming in. So they're causing the problems then. So it's this really, really wild balance between like in like I guess I'll say pro-inflammatory and anti-inflammatory responses of the immune system. Like there's this balance that needs to be attained in order to pass through and be healthy on the other side of this infection. So in the people who are dying from pneumonia, their immune systems just went into overdrive, and there are a number of studies showing, like proving that the people succumb to something called cytokine storm, which is cytokines are molecules that your immune cells release to enable, you know, the clearance of a pathogen. They're essential, but if you have if everything's in overdrive, which could happen for any number of reasons. Your immune system could be so inflamed already because of your diet, for example, but I won't go into that, that it could be primed to go into overdrive when it meets a new pathogen. So boom, you get cytokine storm, you're dead. It's like, yeah, so it's actually the immune system that's causing the trouble with some people. It's of course it's because of the virus being present, but yeah, this is something a lot of people don't understand.
Mm-hmm. So, here's a question for you. Can you be reinfected by the coronavirus if you've already had it, recover, and then are re-exposed?
It's an excellent question that I don't know the answer to. Um,
We don't know enough about the coronavirus and COVID-19.
we don't. The only thing I can say in comment is that there are some people who who doctors test people are claiming are positive again. So on that note, the way that we're detecting the presence of this virus in people is through viral implication through PCR. So this is polymerase chain reaction. So we're testing for the presence of the virus. With most detection tests like this, there's a limit of detection. So it's not all or nothing. For the viruses that I'm familiar with, that I've studied in the past. For this one, I don't know because I'm not doing the testing, but I can imagine that it would be different from all the other viruses. So what I'm trying to say is if somebody has a positive test, it means that the virus was detected in their system when whoever swabbed their nose. If they go back a few weeks later and that test is negative, they're saying, oh, okay, I'm free of the virus. But they go back 2 weeks later and they have the virus in their system again. So the question is this a new strain? Or is this because the second test they had that came back negative was just below some kind of detection limit and the virus was actually still circulating, but just at levels so low that the test didn't detect it? We don't know. This is the subject matter of my third video that I'm posting later today.
Okay. Excellent.
So actual reinfection would be an absolute nightmare because, and I'm not saying that's not what's happening, because I mean, Iran is in literal hell. They're burning right now, the Iranian people, and I, I don't know. It's not impossible because this is a novel pathogen that it hasn't mutated to a more virulent strain, which makes it more dangerous, or that it will. Usually, what happens is a little glimmer of hope as these new pathogens burn through humans is that they become less virulent as they go through their mutation cycles, but we don't know. It's
Okay.
too early.
Why do some regions have higher incidence or concentrations of the coronavirus than others?
Could be a number of reasons, but the short answer is higher levels of seeding. More people were there at some point in the past who were infected.
Okay. So why, for example, in the United States, are there concentrations in Seattle, in Washington State, New York, and California, but not so much spread out over other parts of the United States? Like, is that just to do with um, proximity? You know, people not observing social distancing and that type of thing, and it taking off in that capacity, or is it a lack of testing? Um, why are there specific concentrations that seem larger than other parts of the United States right now?
Airport hubs. That's my short answer. Everything you said is true, which is making the situation worse. But I would say it's because they're airport hubs. Lots of international flights. Uh, yeah, I mean, we all know that airports and airplanes are the place to go to get any kind of virus. So the number of flights that were going back and forth, and before any impositions were in place about like even checking people with the thermometer, which is stupid, but still it's something. Wow, it was so delayed. I mean, in my opinion, this thing has been circulating since November. So just imagine, like, the Chinese New Year, it didn't really happen, and this all kind of came to light, to the global population about what was going on in China in January. But it is said by people on the ground in China that 5 million people from China were on flights circulating the globe, coming home, going away for Chinese New Year. And of those 5 million, there would have been about 50,000 people who were infected. This is not proven, but this is what people have said who are on the ground. And when you think about that, that makes a lot of sense when you look at the spread now. It really does. So this ties into your previous question about why is Italy being like gobsmacked by this right now? More people who were infected were there at the beginning. So yeah, airports, big cities, no social distancing. That's
Okay.
why.
So this gets into conspiracy territory. There is some information floating out there over the internet about this being man-made. Can you quell that? Can you at least say that it's not man-made?
Nope. But I can say that I don't think it is. Nobody knows, and it's possible, but nobody knows. I believe quite firmly that there's no need for anyone to think that this was man-made because nature made it for us, and she's the most brilliant designer of all. And based on sequence analysis, if you want to compare the genetic structure of this virus against a bat coronavirus, they're almost identical except for a couple of amino acids. This can happen in nature. It's like it's not implausible that, say, 2 decades ago, when SARS, was that 2 decades ago? Well, whenever SARS was a big deal, it's plausible because it's also very highly related to SARS, that SARS stuck around in an animal host. And after 2 decades of, mutating and hanging around, and maybe it jumped to a pangolin, because this is the latest idea that there's an intermediate host, which is a pangolin, which was also an animal that's exploited in these markets. Maybe this virus jumped there, and then it jumped into humans. This is a far more plausible idea than it being engineered in a lab. When this first happened, I was like, wow, what if they were studying this? What if someone created this virus in the level 4, lab in Wuhan, and someone was just careless and it got out on the bottom of their shoe, and then they went to the market and This is also possible, but we don't know. Okay. My thought is that it happened naturally, because this is what happens sometimes. That's the joy of evolution.
Okay, and why do some people respond differently to the coronavirus than others?
In what way?
Well, there's certain people that are, as you said, carriers, and they don't exhibit any symptoms.
I see.
And then you have people who are near death. So why is it people's immunology, or is it different immune systems responding differently? Is it happenstance? Is it luck? Is it immunology to properly ask the question? But I'm just curious as to why certain people who contract the virus respond differently than others.
Immunologically. Okay, my quick answer is immune age and immune quality at the time of infection. So this is going to vary your immune state based on your age, based on your diet, based on your previous infections. It's going to be based on many, many things. So it's kind of amazing that children are not experiencing serious pathology whatsoever, not in any place in the world, which is incredible. And it's actually very good news as well. And nobody knows why, but the theory going around is that their immune systems aren't as hearty as they will be when they're grown up. So they're not mounting as ferociously as the adults. Now, I don't know. I haven't looked into this. And we actually might never know, because the immune system is a little bit of a mystery. But so when you get older, the reason why the elderly are more susceptible is because naturally, as you age, your immune system becomes a little bit like weaker. It's just what happens. So your ability to mount efficient responses, I suppose, might be diminished if, in some cases, in some elderly people. They're also claiming that the immunocompromised are a higher risk group. I'm saying they're claiming because I don't know this yet, because the data it's changing every day, every hour. But that makes sense to me too, because if somebody has a pre-existing condition and they're immunocompromised, or they're on some kind of drug that's perhaps making them more susceptible to succumbing to more serious pathology, then naturally that's what's going to happen. So the best advice doctors and immunologists and everyone is giving out to people in general is just try to stay healthy. Do what you do normally. Try not to stress out, because that really screws up your immune system. And eat well, drink a lot of water. Just try to stay as charged immunologically as you normally are. But yeah, there's no like 100% answer to that question either. But I will say something very interesting that I heard last night from Dr. Fauci, Anthony Fauci. There's a cluster of people in oh geez, is it in Italy or Iran? Italy. So there's a cluster of people in Italy who have the most serious pathology. And it turned out when they looked into the data, when they did some bioinformatic analysis, that these people were all hypertensive. And naturally, if you're in a place that has good medical care, if you have a condition like hypertension, you probably have a doctor who's probably going to prescribe to you something for that, so that you balance your immune state and that you live a regular life, a healthy life. So, interestingly, they claim this is all just ideas now. It's real, but it hasn't. There's no paper written on this yet. About 75% of these people with hypertension are on ACE inhibitors, and the reason why that's really interesting, this is angiotensin inhibitors, is because this is precisely the enzyme that the virus binds to in order to gain access to cells. So there's something going on there. I mean, we don't know what it is. It's weird. To me, it seems counterintuitive, but there's something definitely going on there. So in terms of groups of people who are more susceptible, it seems like in the very near future, our very first group of people is going to be defined like scientifically, and that's the group of people who are hypertensive on ACE inhibitors. Like pretty soon you're going to see that published.
So hold on, are these people having less instances of the
Oh, higher. No, they're the ones who are doing the worst. So the
okay.
ones on, so it's about 75% of the people who have bad pathologies, like the pneumonia and the loss of air. They're the ones on these ACE inhibitors.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's fascinating.
It is. It really is.
So what do you think of different countries' governments' approaches to dealing with this coronavirus?
That's a hard one. I think it's interesting that Israel has kind of been one of the first to get really serious. I mean, we were one of the first to stop with the flights. I'm not sure how enforced this was, but we limited flights from China, for example. We were one of the first, and then they were the first to not allow flights from South Korea. Actually, the flight that I was meant to be on was canceled, and one of the flight attendants, it was sent back, and she was found to be positive. So, yeah. So yeah, my mom asked me earlier, "Are you glad you canceled your trip?" And I'm like, I don't know. Yes and no. But I think I'd have to say overall, I'm pretty impressed with the response. It seems like the governing bodies and humans who are actually leading these governing bodies actually do have the best interests of their people at heart, because they all seem to be promoting the same thing, which is like, let's close ourselves off for a while, man, because this is the only way we're getting out of this. So does that answer?
Yeah, that answers the question for sure. I just have two more questions, and then if there's anything else you want to add, that would be great. But what do you think will be the effects of the coronavirus on economies and societies in general throughout the world? It's a broad question, but
there's going to be a lot of death. There's going to be a lot of suffering to come, but I'm hopeful and I'm optimistic to the end. I think that we will have behaved the way that we need to in time in order to save both our people and our planet, for that matter, and therefore the economy. I also talked about this in one of my videos. Like, if you're not a people lover, because a lot of people talk about like, yeah, I wish the end of the world would come, man, get rid of these humans. So if you're one of those, the incentive to isolate is the same to save the economy, because the more people who get involved with shutting this thing down and getting back to normal faster, the better the economy, the better chance we'll have at reviving the economy or getting it back to some kind of normalcy. If you ask me personally if I think that's going to happen, I think no. But time will tell. I don't think that's a bad thing, because I think most of us know that we need to restructure the way that we have things set up right now. Like, we need to really investigate the meaning of the word equality, and we need to we need a little bit of a reset in terms of economic balance, because I think we can all agree that there is no balance in the economy right now. I'm not an economist, though.
Okay.
So that's what I think. I think we're in it for the long haul in general.
Okay, so my last question is something that I am concerned about, because I've come into contact with many people with mental health issues, and um, I know there's steps being taken by different fields of medicine to help deal with the pandemic in that capacity. But what do you think are the effects of the coronavirus pandemic on mental health?
That's a really interesting question with a really complicated answer. I think it could have it's going to depend on the individual. It could have a devastating effect on someone who's depressed. Maybe they depend on interaction with people. I know somebody like that. If she's depressed, and if she doesn't like have human contact every day, she goes crazy. So in that regard, it's probably not going to feel too good. However, there are going to be, and there are so many benefits to what's happening right now. People are going to be able to get back in touch with things that they lost touch with because of being consumed with their lives, with their jobs, with the rat race, with taking care of their kids but not taking care of their kids. It's gonna be a shift. There's no doubt about that. And the question is, are the people, it's a lot of people who are suffering mentally and emotionally, are they going to be equipped to be able to experience the positive side? That's my question. And I don't know if that boils down to an individual choice, because I don't think anyone chooses to have their brain chemistry messed up. But again, on that subject, maybe with your cars driving around with less noise, with more peace, with more silence, maybe this is going to really help a lot of people deal with their emotional state, or their I don't know how to put it. I mean, I think it's all going back to brain chemistry, but maybe it will help. That's my hope. I don't know. I think it's really going to depend on the individual. I'm also, we all know, like, many people who have different levels of suffering in their life, and a lot of time I think it can be traced back to brain chemistry, which is traced back to, a lot of people will laugh, but this is not a laughing matter, to diet, to the microbiome, the gut microbiome. And again, it's an opportunity, in my opinion, to investigate your own body and to come back to something that maybe you forgot about. And maybe it's going to serendipitously fix some of the problems you have. That's my best answer.
Oh, that's a great answer. So, is there anything else you'd like to add or that you'd like to say? I thank you so much for this interview, and it's been very informative.
No, thanks so much for giving me a platform to talk, because yeah, I actually feel like it does help. The only thing I have to say is, if anybody who's listening to this, please, even if you believe in conspiracy theories, the best thing you can do now is to restrict your movement, to isolate in your home for now, rediscover some things you might have forgotten, and stay away from everyone as if you don't want to infect them. That's the best advice I can give.